I know. Klay was due. Klay was due, right? The law of averages. Klay finally got hot. The lid came off the basket. And if you were going to be a pessimist, like I myself, you would say, well, all that's going to do is encourage Klay to keep shooting more and more and take bad shots, right? That's not what I saw. That's not what I saw last night. And I thought that it would only be fair to hop on here and speak on it because, yeah, I've been on Klay's neck, and a lot of people have, rightfully so, I think. Sometimes it takes maybe hitting rock bottom for somebody to kind of make a change. And maybe the other night in Phoenix, getting benched at the end of the game was rock bottom for Klay because I saw more than just Klay getting hot, taking the same shots, which seemed to be kind of the sentiment on Twitter and with Dub Nation. First off, let's talk about the shot, right? Did you notice there was more lift in it? There was more lift in the shot, which indicated to me I've been talking about that right leg and the autopathy. Did I say it right? I probably didn't. But right, he hasn't wanted to use that right leg as much, whether it's lifting up or landing on is when you really see it. And last night he had more lift and he was landing more on balance, right? That's first and foremost with the shots. But secondly, once he really got hot in that third quarter and it was like, all right, Klay, he's just going to let everything go, right? He didn't. He started playing pick and pop with Dario Sarge. And so I think what we saw was a much more controlled outburst from Klay than you typically see, right? Like usually he just gets hot and it's just like all bets are off. He's putting up everything and they start going in. That wasn't the case. It was much more controlled and he was moving the ball and trying to create shots. Looney, how many times did he sputter out the offense? We'll talk about that here in a minute. But I think if you go back and look, it was a much more controlled outburst from Klay. He had more lift and balance in his legs. But then maybe more importantly, what I saw was on the defensive end. Now, Kenny Atkinson, Mike Brown, where's Ron Adams? I know that he's kind of semi-retired. We need someone on the bench and on this staff that can coach up this defense schematically. There are a ton of just schematic issues that I'm seeing where you've got two low men helping stacked on each other, and then one of them's late. There's all sorts of problems. But in a vacuum, Klay himself closed out to the corners, rotated out better than I had seen in years. There was an urgency. There was fundamentals. He chopped down right into his stance. And to me, I saw a much more focused Klay Thompson than I've seen. Not a guy that was out there feeling entitled to being the star that he had been. It was a focused, determined Klay and a patient Klay, a conscientious Klay. And so as frustrating as it is these losses pile up, and I know it's very easy to say, oh, Klay just got hot and it's just one-off. Obviously, we can't expect him to shoot this way all the time, right? He hit 8 threes, but there were these signs and glimpses that he is going to turn the corner and just be a better overall player and teammate. So I'm really excited about that, and I wanted to acknowledge that and shout that out because I can't just I don't. It's not fair to just criticize him and not point out when he's done. It looks like he's trying to make a change, and it goes far beyond just making shots. And then talking about the game overall, right? I love the fact that he went to Kuminga and Podziemski to start the game, but then ultimately, what did Steve do? He went back to Kavan to close the game. And whether it's Kavan or Dario, we don't have any rim protection, right? I think that is the biggest glaring issue. I know I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know, but it's just such a domino effect. And Looney right now has reached a point where I don't think you can close games with him. I don't know how much he can play. That's not to say he's cooked, he's finished, but until he can get in better shape and play with more urgency, more alertness, much like I was talking about Klay, I think he's got to be like a 10 to 12, 15-minute guy. And the tough thing about it is we don't have any other size. Dario is a revolving door defensively. I'm not sure you can ask Dario. It's not an effort thing, right? It's a physicality thing. He can't play vertically. He's slow-footed, right? And he just kind of retreats until the guy is at the rim. And that's just the biggest glaring issue, and we're at this point here where we talked about two timelines for so long, right? We're at this point where what do you do if Steph? We cannot survive a Steph Curry shooting slump right now. It goes without saying, but it looks like he's kind of in one. But we're at this point where, 2 years ago, they were premature to jump the gun with the youth, right? Now, is that going to cause them to hold on too long to this veteran cause? Because at a certain point here, you dig a deep enough hole, you might have to just push the eject button on this season. Not yet. Not yet, right? You look at the schedule moving forward here. The next 5 games, could they go 4-1? The Clippers have been hot, man. The Clippers have been hot. But other than Boston, you got Brooklyn, you got Portland, you got Washington. I think you got Portland again. Could they run off a 4-1 streak here? And then all of a sudden we're talking differently. I know, we live in a knee-jerk reaction world, especially with sports media. But, I think it's also running in the back of our heads. Like, do you lean into the youth, or are you really going to flip some of these young players and bring in another veteran guy or another star player with guys that how tight is this window? How tight is this window? It seems like it's getting slimmer and slimmer. And I think the alarming thing is we can have these moral victories night to night with the young guys, or Klay looking like he's turning a corner here. It feels like we're at a talent deficit almost every night. And that's a problem, right? As far as the Clippers go, man, listen, they're rolling, and it's no secret. I'm not a Harden fan. I'm not a believer in the way they've constructed this roster. And listen, James Harden in December can look like an MVP, and he did last night. He ate us up, man. But what I would tell Clipper fans is enjoy it while it lasts. Before he goes into hibernation in sometime around April or May, right? But no, jokes aside, the talent deficit across the Western Conference is alarming. And reading between the lines with Steph and these things, it sounds like Steph is ready for change. Now, what that change may be, your guess is as good as mine. As far as the Steve Kerr thing, this may be the first time ever I've agreed with Stephen A., but why can't we question Steph's leadership in that instance, right? No one is perfect, right? And for Kerr to get, so I get it, Kerr's going to be defensive, but the bottom line is, as great as Steph is, and part of why the chemistry between the big three was so good was Steph's not really a vocal leader, right? And so it allowed Draymond to be this big, loud vocal leader. And that's always been the dynamic between them. And so that's hard to change after so long. But I agree, like in hindsight, Steph, probably the only voice within the organization that maybe could have reeled in Draymond sooner than it's got to this point. Is that fair to put? I'm not trying to put it all on Steph. I just think it's fair to acknowledge that. Underdog Fantasy, use the code Alchemy. You get 100% bonus on your first $100. What I would recommend is, if you like to take some picks with the Warriors, which I do, is Moses Moody and Kuminga and Pajemski, the young guys, as they're getting more opportunities, you can hit higher on a lot of their numbers. So that would be my recommendation. And then if you got to have one pick on the opponent side, I love free throw shot higher with a main player, considering we foul everybody all the time, right? So again, links in the description. Underdog Fantasy, support the channel. And as always, hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.